I'm Svitek, 360 creative coach, and in this episode, I want to talk about M. Night Shyamalan's approach to filmmaking. Not necessarily his technique, but the business side, right? And extract from it something that I think is quite unique and actually can be replicated, right? Now, before I fully dive into it though, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, where I'm coming from. So, very recently, I rewatched Old, which is an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And I didn't love it when it first came out, but one of my friends, he was intrigued to see it, and so I was like, all right, I'll humor you. We were having some drinks and whatever, so I was like, it'll be just fun to see your reaction. But as I watched it, again, I didn't love it, but it got me thinking because I knew this fact from a while back, and it got me thinking. And it's this idea that he's been paying for his movies for the past few ones. And I'm going to read a quote from Collider where they did an interview with him. And I've linked to the interview itself and the article in the description box, so if you want to check out the full thing, you can. But during the interview, he says, "I paid for Visit, Split, Glass, and Old. All four of those. And I paid for Servant as well. The reason that I do it is to do it at the smallest number where I can be free and I can do something provocative and different and unusual, and I'm not putting my partners at risk. I'm taking the risk. In most scenarios, because we're doing it at such a small price, we're going to be okay no matter what. So we can make the most interesting art. I don't have to think about some equation of safety. I don't have to think about that. I believe the flip happens when the audience can feel that it's different. That there is no safety valves on it. There is no safety guardrails on it. They can feel that there is no supervision, and it's this kind of free-spirited thing. I believe audiences can feel that, and that's why they've been coming to these movies." And it's true, right? Regardless of how I may feel about the movies, some are hits, some are misses, and people sometimes agree with my assessment of it, sometimes disagree. But I applaud that notion, right? And I think that that's huge, where someone really is taking that risk on themselves. And for all intents and purposes, the way it works out is he funds the movie. As he said, it's small budgeted. And then when it goes on into the movie theaters, he makes a big profit from it, right? And it's not like his movies are $300 million profits, but when you're talking about a small budget, like Old, for example, had an $18 million budget, which is definitely a lot of money in the everyday world, but for a movie, not that much, right? And so he can stay, even if it's not like the most successful one, he's basically hedging his bets. And it's just an interesting viewpoint because, Robert Rodriguez in many ways kind of did the same thing where, he set out to make his first feature film for $7,000, and their initial intent was to put it out into the home video market, which is an antiquated thing at this point, but do that and try to get enough money to, get a return on that and maybe a little bit more so then they can make the next one. And then a third one, right? And they were going to do this to keep getting better and better. And I think they wanted to make 3 films in this way and see kind of what was going to happen from there. And he made such a good movie that all of a sudden his career exploded from that. But, also he had been making movies his entire life. So it's not like it was just a random fluke. And in many ways, Robert Rodriguez is akin to this, where he doesn't fund all of his movies necessarily, but he does minimize the budget so that way he can have more creative freedom. And I think that side of it does apply. It's certainly kind of been my mantra, and the way I've gone about it my first two movies, I pretty much the first one I self-funded. The second one, I did some crowdfunding for. And the reason for that was, A, it needed a bigger budget, but also I felt comfortable at that time of like, hey, if people want to give money to me, they can base whether or not they want to do that because I already made one movie and they can watch that and see if they like it and whatever else. So at least like it wasn't a blind bet, if you will. And yeah, in that way, I hope to continue along that same path. And certainly my budgets are nowhere even near like low budget level. Mine are like, ultra low budget at this point. But, much like him and Robert Rodriguez, I know how to stretch the dollar and make it appear bigger than it is. And it does give me, that's what I appreciate. It does give me that freedom to be able to play and experiment and, go beyond certain boundaries and see if that works. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, you change it before you put it out, right? Those types of things. So I think all in all, it's an interesting viewpoint. And I think, this can be extracted into all forms, right? Whether it's music, whether it's writing in terms of, let's say, novels, whatever else, it is out there. And so, it can be a slow process, especially when you're starting off. But it's like, okay, how can you create the thing, make back the money you put into it, and then some, and essentially reinvest that into the next thing until it snowballs and snowballs, right? That's really what it's all about. And in that way, it takes patience. Just think of The Visit. That's, how many years ago, right? I forget exactly how, 2015, right? So at this point, about 7 years, give or take, right? So, that's been us 7 years worth of making a movie, reinvesting into it, into the next one, and so forth. So you have to have that patience, but it is doable, and these are just two examples of, I'm sure, many artists out there, if I really thought about it, that go about in this way where, they can really kind of be self-sustaining. And, these are not necessarily household names, right? But well-known people. And the beautiful part about kind of how I look at art nowadays is that, the Kevin Kelly model, 1,000 true fans. All you really need is 1,000 true fans that are willing to give you $100 at least once a year, right? If you can do that, you can make a living and you can make the stuff that you want to make. And so, I think we all have to just figure out, parameters isn't the right word, but the way to operate within, this space and utilize it instead of just the traditional old school models that exist of like, oh, okay, if I'm a musician, I got to get a record label. If I'm a writer, then I got to get a publisher. If I'm a filmmaker, then I need to get a studio attached and all this stuff. The barriers to entry can be non-existent. It's hard, it doesn't make it any easier. In fact, it can make it a lot harder to do the thing that you're doing because you don't have that support that would be there. But, it can also bring about some of the most exciting art that exists, right? And so I think that's a worthwhile trade-off to consider. And I'm not knocking, again, any of these things, but, my philosophy has always been, no one's knocking on my door to make my movies or, publish books and things of that nature, but I want to do those things. And so I'm just going to keep doing it. And if later on down the line, someone does decide like, hey, this guy's really good and, we should fund his next project, great. That would be fantastic. And yes, that is an ideal worth striving for. But right now that's not happening. So I'm just going to do it at the level that I can and continue to build and build. And you can apply that to the stuff that you're doing. That's what's so wonderful about all this, right? You just have to be willing to take a shot on yourself, just like M. Night Shyamalan. So that's my message to you. I hope it has inspired you. I hope it has given you a specific takeaway. If you have any thoughts or questions, by all means, ask away down in the comment section or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Likewise, if you would like to have more direct interactions, well, that is possible through my Patreon page at patreon.com/PhilSvitek. There's various tiers and various ways for us to interact on a deeper level, if you will. Likewise, I've been hinting at various projects creatively that I have going on and have created. Well, it would mean a lot to me if you check those out. They are down in the description box as well. And, supporting those allows me to do this. And by doing those, I don't like to just theorize, right? I can say all the stuff that I'm saying with confidence because I'm living it, right? And I'm doing it in that way. And I may not have everything figured out 100%, but certainly, it's not theoretical. My hands are tied into making this stuff. And so by being able to do that, I can then, do these types of videos and episodes and be able to give my insights based off of that. And so, if you support that side of things for me, then it allows me to continue to do this. So, yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and hope to see you next time.